to our last EB evidence-based project management roundtable for 2022, because next one's in 2023. It's amazing how fast this year went. We've had a lot of good speakers this year. One was a continuation of a book series or research done, and that was amazing. And we're getting ready for 2023 as well. We already have 3 or 4 speeches lined up for next year, and we're always willing. We want people to come to join and to speak and present their ideas. And it's really not as scary as you think it is. And we'd love to have you speak. Again, Doug went out there to speak at the Las Vegas one, but even remote, and it looks like it was a success. And it's a great way to network and share your ideas. With that, I will send an email message in a chat with the PDUs soon, as well as a copy of this presentation. With that, I want to move forward with our presentation, and I'll be honest, Jacques Alexis, who is my co-facilitator here, it was his great idea to come up with this topic, and all these slides are his, and I am just helping him speaking on a few of these, but it was all up to him, and I greatly appreciate the value he adds to this presentation and to this roundtable.
It was a collaborative effort.
It was collaborative, that's true.
Sorry.
It was, we have a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about this topic. We're going to talk about, look at the premises and the terminologies. We're talking about the value change and the EVCC, which is the ecosystem value creation and capture. And as we're looking at this research, there's been a lot of research on stakeholder management. And actually, I've actually presented once or twice on stakeholder management in this roundtable a year or 2 years ago, if you can believe that. And what EVCC, Earned Value Creation Capture, does is it actually builds upon stakeholder management, as well as trying to figure out how you can network with other organizations to help build value, whether for yourself, and capture that value from working with others. And we're going to really focus on that. And what I've seen is I've seen some people here about some questions already. So thank you very much. We want to have this as an active conversation. So feel free to add your comments, ask questions, interrupt us if you want to, use the chat. We want to make sure that this provides value for everybody else. To answer Josh's questions about what is covered here, we're going to be talking about this concept of capturing the value along with the stakeholder management, and we're going to go into more about that in a few minutes. And we're talking about what's the phrase you're looking at? What is the research telling us, and how using this new terminologies, this new system is going to benefit the business unit overall, especially when we're working with projects. So we will be talking about different things such as the skills needed, the business acumen, and the way of working. So we're going to cover it all. And the last piece about evaluating partners and business ecosystems is the way that we're going to end up. In our premises, I'm sorry, if you look at the chats, I'll answer the chat in a few minutes with the PDUs in a few minutes. Our premises is this, it's volatile, it's uncertain. We have a ambiguous business environment. And we're trying to figure out ways to capture value. And if you're looking at an accounting system, it's usually a business value is captured in a business unit or the organization. But we're saying that we can no longer think of adding value or capturing value in isolation. It's much more complex. We understand that firms must compete in the different business world, the different ecosystems. But the important thing is, or the trend that we're seeing, or the research that we're seeing, is firms need to collaborate. They need to partner, forming alliances, and to create and deliver and capture that value. And that is one of our key premises of this conversation, that we can no longer think of a business in isolation, but more of a strategic relationship with other companies, organizations. We also believe or assume that creating and delivering value in this type of ecosystem requires resources and capabilities that no one single firm possesses. It's almost like an economics term, like comparative analysis, where we are enhancing our strengths and trying to find ways to, if we have any weaknesses, gather that weakness and to improve upon that. And having an ecosystem with other organizations helps us enhance our strengths and to try to, if we have any weaknesses, build upon or try to minimize those weaknesses by working with others. And then finally, our last premise is ecosystems or business ecosystems are not static. They are always evolving over time. Companies or organizations that stay stagnant usually don't succeed. It's those companies and ecosystems that actually learn new things and adapt and are very flexible that go on to succeed in the business. Next slide, please. So here are some key terminologies versus the value. And basically that's, common knowledge that the value is the benefit a product or service provides. Is either perceived or measured by some sort of stakeholder, which includes not only the business, but also the customer, as well as the shareholders, or you can even say stakeholders as well. Value creation, and this can be tricky, is like how you determine this, but value creation is the process by which businesses use relationships, exchanges, and resources to create products and services. And then the customers assign that value to the products and services. All right. One way to look at that is you look at, an easy thing is the fast food industry. You have Burger King, Wendy's, McDonald's. They all make burgers, could be one fast food, but they all have some sort of, difference. Make it your way or flame broiled or things like that. They're trying to create a value, and then customers evaluate that value by sales. Value proposition is an innovation, service, or feature intended to make the product or company more attractive. Again, very similar to what I was talking about here about the burgers industry. A value proposition guides that customer in selecting one product over the other. iPhone versus Android, different sorts of, streaming versus cable, things like that. The next type of pieces where we're talking about more closely is value capture and customer value. Value capture are firms exchanging values within the business ecosystem. And that capture, the value capture, is the amount of value retained by each firm in excess of the revenue or profits. Lots of times we look at this as monetary, but you can also look at non-monetary terms, or I forget the phrase used in the project management, ancillary goals, right? Things that are out of the ordinary or not specifically mentioned. This can be go ahead.
A non-financial benefit.
Non-financial benefit, yep.
Yes, we talk about
like improved efficiencies, improving the fresh networking. Customer value is the difference between the total benefit obtained from the product or service and the total cost incurred to obtain it. It is formed as a result of the customer's perception that the product or service exceeds that value. So you have value capture, customer value. The business value is on the flip side. It's the benefit realized by a firm in the business ecosystem. It's typically looked at in terms of profit, cost reduction, or as we said earlier, improved efficiency. And then finally, ecosystems. Ecosystems, basically the network, but not only individuals, but also organizations that not only collaborate, but they synchronize their efforts and investments to create value and increase efficiency. Any questions on that, or Jacques, do you want to add anything else?
Well, I believe, we've heard the word value all the time from business perspective. I think you've done here a fantastic job. You know, from what we talk about from an organizational perspective here, about what we're going to think about for the remaining of this conversation. So the idea is to make this as interactive as possible. We're going to invite you as we go through. You can raise your hand using the virtual hand, and John and I, we're going to monitor and facilitate this conversation. And we really want you to get involved here, share your experience, how your organization is doing it. John is going to give you an example of a business ecosystem, how, you know, they can, you know, at different point in the ecosystem life cycle. So I believe that's all. Unless we have questions in the chat, we can certainly go forward. Yeah.
And the research of this has really been fairly new. I think in 2016, it's really started to take off. So this type of earned value analysis on this ecosystem is fairly new in the project management world from looking at the research perspective.
Absolutely. And our presentation is based, or this roundtable is based on research or ideas presented by Michael Porter in his book Competitive Advantage, first published in 1985, but the concept really has evolved over time. And right now we have contributions from a group of researchers at the University of Cambridge in the UK, and research that John and I obviously done to put together this presentation. Okay.
Next slide, please.
Absolutely. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to share with you the idea of value chain models. And we're going to talk about the purpose of value chain analysis, which is really a strategic activity process in organizations. So as you can see here, this is based on the first model proposed by Michael Eugene Porter. And the idea is that a value chain is a sequence of business activities or function in which value, as defined by John earlier, is added to products and services. So here we have two categories of activities. You have primary activities and support activities. Now, what I'd like you to know is that the support activities are not less important than the primary activities, but because you need them to really function effectively and efficiently. But all is integrated to create products and services. So, and John also talked about the idea of a value proposition, and the value proposition is anything from your products and services that can differentiate you from your competitors, because in an ecosystem you're going to compete and collaborate sometimes. For example, one thing we've seen recently is a partnership, an alliance between Ford Motor Company and Volkswagen. Right? They want to create together, they want to put their resources, consolidate resources to develop autonomous vehicles. And at the same time, they're competing in the car market. So this is really a good example. So the primary activities that where you, or primary functions where you're going to look to see whether you're going to have a functional competitive advantage include research and development, product design, productions or manufacturing. We use the word productions because we want to know when we say product, it could be a tangible product or an intangible product. And an intangible product is what we call a service. Marketing and distributions, you will see that people collaborate in the ecosystem, because a company may have a great marketing strategy, and so we're going to work together to market this great product that I create, and you're better at this than we are. What's this partnership is going to look like, or this alliance, what's it going to look like? And John is going to talk about, how do we evaluate your partners or your alliances in the ecosystem? What are the key factors you have to take into considerations? Obviously, there is customer service. So the valuation shows how cost and customer value accumulate along a chain of activities that lead to a final product. So we talk about that. And also the idea of firms need to collaborate and work together to create values is where you lack knowledge and expertise. What are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, I can't do this because I'm going to give up because I can do it? No, you look for partners to do that. Now, the last functions of the valuations is the idea of customer service. You don't, and we're going to talk about the trend to not only offer a physical product, but to try to offer a service, right? A service is something you can provide continuously, whichever. So a good example is that in the past, you were able to purchase a software, for example. There was a desktop version you could buy. You could have a one-time cost and install it on your computer, but most companies, software companies, stop doing that. Now it's software as a service, right? So there's this tendency where everyone says, that's a great model. That's what we're going to do, because once we have a customer, we may keep this customer forever, right? So that's the whole idea here. Customer service is extremely important. And we see a bunch of manufacturing firms trying to cut the middleman. Tesla, for example, is one of the companies that did that from the very beginning. They say, we're not going to take a middleman, we're going to just build up and we're going to offer services to our customers as well. So that's one of them. So some of the support activities in any organizations or business unit, you have human resources, information technology, management, contract or procurement, management, inventory management, plant maintenance, etc. Those are things you really need, the necessary for your organizations to function. So this is actually what we call the legacy model of the value chains. That's what it's look like. So if we have questions in the chat, John, we can certainly look at them. But if not, we're going to show how this model, evolves over time.
Yeah, there was an interesting comment from Doug regarding our presentation. It looks like we're talking about value created at some point after the end of a project, when we talk about earned value analysis, measures of value created during a project.
Yes, so we are talking about value creating in an ecosystem. So we're talking about business value and customer value. We're not talking about earned value from a project management perspective, but we're talking about benefit and benefit realizations, value capture or value lost. If you can't, someone create the value and no one captures it, then you lost it. So that's exactly what we're talking about here. And yes, so value is, creating throughout the supply, the value chain. And we're going to talk about how the supply chain fits into all this. Do we have any other questions here?
No other questions.
All right. So, as we understand business and societies evolve, we understand the need to for more integrations and actually to take not only the business environment into considerations, but also the what we call the natural environment. Right. So as you can see here, a key difference, it's still the same. We create the purpose of the value chain is to create value, and we're talking about business and customer value, and we have to offer a product or service to our customers. Now, what I'd like you to keep in mind, you can think about this from a B2B perspective or to the end customer perspective. So your company doesn't need to have anything to do with an end consumer. It could mean that you're providing a service to other businesses, right? So the key difference here, we're still doing the same thing, but here we're saying, we need to take a system approach to this, not only going to talk about the natural environment. So how we going to protect the environment so as not to destroy it? Because think about it. You'd like your business to last forever, from generations to generations. Some business have been out there for 150 years, if not more. But what's going to happen is that we're saying some business cease to exist, not because they didn't have any customers, but because they didn't have the resources they needed to produce or to create value. So the idea of how we protect the environment is about disposal and recycling. So this is something you do from the very beginning of the value chain, from research and development in product design. So that's what we call upstream activities. So in upstream activities, although you see this as a linear process, it isn't. And we're going to show you a different model where you can actually see. Now, what the supply chain come into place is when you design a product, you're going to manufacture it, then you need raw materials, right? So the supply chains is the flow of commodities, materials, and services from the original sources to final customers. So here you see the supply chain is taking into considerations, and also how your product is ending up where at the end. So if you think about a product life cycle in the decline phase or disposal phase, what you're going to do with it? Can you reuse it? Can you remanufacture it? And the ability to do this may require you to do some research and development too, to understand how you're going to do this. So this is the second model that we present here, where the value supply chain comes into play. And how about environmental sustainability? And John, in the evaluations of key factors to take into considerations, he's going to talk about ESG, environmental, social, and governance here. And hopefully we will have time to talk as much as we can. So second model, evolutions of the model, supply chain, and how we take care of the environment in the process of creating and capturing value. So do we have any questions in the chat, John?
Nothing further.
Okay. So the third model is nothing changed. It's all geared toward a product or service. But what we are asking right now, I'm going to move this to the top, is that what if we look at it as a cyclical model? We still need the support activities at the bottom. You know what they are. Human resource management, accounting and finance, inventory management, technology management, etc. But we still have the primary activities. We have research and development, design, productions, the supply chain come into place here. You have marketing and distributions, customer service, and disposal and recycling. It's obviously not a linear process. It is a cyclical process because you can actually start over. When you create a product, the creations of this product give you the opportunity to create a service, but also it gives you the opportunity for what we call incremental innovation. So incremental innovations means that you create something, can you make it better in any way you can for your customers? So that's what you're looking at here in this in this model, right? So we create a product. Can we actually do some research to understand how we're going to improve it? So it could be basic research, could be applied research, could be market research, but at least we understand this is not a linear process. It's actually a cyclical process. Now, if we don't, do we have any questions here? No questions.
No questions. No questions.
Okay. Now, so that's the idea of a third model, how to look at this supply chain. Now, how do we create value? Remember, we can take a look at it from the end customer or from B2B. And at one point, I'm going to focus on B2B when we talk about building and entering business ecosystems. So a business can affect its customers' perceptions of value. How can you do that? There are two ways or combinations of ways to do that. The first one is to differentiate your product and service from your competitors. And these differentiations will help your customers understand you and perceive you differently. And the second way is to lower your price. And by lowering your price, you actually add more values to your customer, because we define value from the very beginning as the benefit realized above the price you pay for a product or service. So if you can lower your price or you can differentiate your product from your competitor, it's a great thing. And John talked about something earlier. Why should I choose an Android over an iPhone, right? The idea of Apple value propositions is that life is easier with an iPhone, right? Because they want you to be in that ecosystem where everything is there, and you have Apple products you can use. Android value propositions is that with Android you can actually have more apps, because there are a lot of apps that are built on Android platforms or on the Android platform that is they're not available on iPhone. So you can have more apps. Now, if this is true, this is how each company create value. We're not here to assume that whatever that value propositions according to the firm is true. We let the customers decide whether this is true or not. So that's from the customer's perspective. From the business perspective, we're going to take a value in monetary terms, but also, as John talked about, in non-monetary terms, because there are different ways you can create and capture values for your organizations in your organization or the businesses in your ecosystem. So it's not only about, it's not always about money. And John said it earlier, customer value is the difference between the total benefits obtained from a product or service and the total cost incurred to obtain it. We have a little picture here at the bottom of the right of my screen. That's some sort of graphic that shows you how that meant. When as a business we have cost, and we need to make a profit, whatever it's small or large. That's how we come up with a price, and the money I pay for it as a customer, do I see any benefit? So we talk about, in this case, value provision as products and services that will address a pain for the customer, something they need to do for the business. So that's creating business and customer value here from this perspective. And before I move to a different slide, I'm going to yeah, absolutely. And Namanja express it to. This is the same thing. When you have a simple linear equations, you can move things around. That's absolutely true. That's fantastic. You're probably a mathematician. Okay, so so value chain analysis. Now, I don't know if you can see my screen here. I have this thing coming my way from time to time. That's the view in Zoom. And we're not going to focus only on Porter's ideas. We also brought other ideas to this. But a value chain analysis is probably something that all of people, talk about SWOT analysis and other, strategic analysis tool out there. But value chain analysis is one of the things, companies do. It's a strategic analysis tool. What does it do? It helps us identify and assess the processes and activities that add value to its products and services, but there must be alignment with those activities and the firm's overall strategy. So two things to keep in mind here is identifies and connects organization's strategic activities and also improves a firm's knowledge of its relations with customers, suppliers, and competitors. And when we take a look at an ecosystem, this is exactly what we're going to look like. Now, performing a value chain analysis is going to be a three-step process. Now, there is no single one way to do things in management, whether we're talking about strategic or operations management. But the first step is really to identify the value chain activities, both primary and secondary activities in the ecosystem. And when you are looking at your primary and secondary activities, one thing businesses need to think about is where in those functions they can actually have a functional strategy. Functional strategy could mean that are we going to invest heavily in R&D, trying to be a leader or first mover in a market segment, or are we going to wait for the leader to create something, reverse engineer it, and imitate it? So imitation is also a strategy. So some businesses be a good example is people, pharmaceutical companies that focus on creating generic drugs, right? The second step is to determine the cost and value of these activities, and third, determine how each value creating can produce a competitive advantage. And here, John talked about can we improve our efficiency? Can we reduce our costs, or can we differentiate our products? And the choice of your strategy, and I believe many folks talk about that in this roundtable, is thinking about your resources, what resources you have, and what are your capabilities. If you take a look at your human resource, for example, do you have the knowledge within your firm to do certain things, or would you prefer to outsource some of your activities and focus on what you do best? Now, what gives you a competitive advantage is it will come from your key resources or whatever you have in abundance that other firms don't have. Now, if everyone has it, is not a source of competitive advantage. Something you have, others don't. So the third, actually, one of the most important things to remember, value chain analysis, it requires a cross-functional team. A cross-functional team is what project managers call matrix structures, where you have people from different functions. For example, you have a team with R&D, a team from design, a team member from R&D, a team member from design, a team member from productions, etc. Get members throughout the value chains to form a cross-functional team or matrix team to perform this analysis. That's how you're going to understand it, and that's how you are going to be successful, right? So it's now 12:40. I'm going to go as fast as I can to make sure if we have questions or comments pending, we can take them. But remember, you can be part of these conversations anytime. So I'm going to give you this example of a value creations and capture mapping. This was created by a group of researchers at the University of Cambridge. And take a look at your business here. As you can see, there is no relationship between your business, the blue one, and the end customer, right? So, but you are a partner in the ecosystem. So you must take a look at your suppliers, who you're going to partner with in the ecosystem, and how you're going to create value in the ecosystem. In many of the research studies performed or conducted at the University of Cambridge, they talk about direct versus indirect values. Here we're going to focus, we're going to talk about value in general, and we're going to, see how best companies can, enter or build an ecosystem or a network in order to create and capture value. So that's an example of an ecosystem value mapping. If you think about it, we could actually have a workshop where we ask participants, to create a map of your company's value business ecosystem. What does it look like? Who are the partners? Who are your competitors? Who are the influencers in the ecosystem? So that's actually would be a very interesting activity. So what you're looking at here right now is a classifications of partner connections. We can have different level of relationships or partnership in the ecosystem, from the left to the right. You have simple relationship, right, where value flow is actually one directional of commodity nature. So it's the case where you get a supplier. You have a supplier. The only relationship is that they supply you a product that you need to create something like raw material, and what you offer in return, you pay for it. You just pay money for it. So there is no real collaborations here. A supplier is probably something you could change anytime. But what we see recently, there was a trend for companies trying to reduce the number of suppliers they use, and they create what we call a vendor list. Now, those vendors are assessed, and sometimes annually or any interval that the company sees fit. But it's a simple relationship. If the vendor doesn't innovate, is it going to be a problem for you? Maybe not. But you can see this bi-directional relationship where we offer each other something. So value delivered changes on requirements of the focus company. For example, if think about your company in the middle of all this. So is there a need for innovation in order for us to, if we depend on each other, if we must continue to exist and compete effectively and efficiently in the business ecosystem, we have to innovate, and we have to do it together. At the beginning, I think we talk about the collaborations, the alliance between, it's a strategic alliance between Ford and Volkswagen, to create autonomous vehicles. So multi-directionals here is when you have many people, it's starts to be a more complex ecosystem where you have more people, and all ecosystems over time will become more complex as more people involve and collaborate into it. But the next level of this is to create together a new entity. Now, in 4, we create a new entity, but we're not going to go and work for this company. But in the last part, as you can see, we create a new legal entity, and people from the original company, what they do, they go and work for this new entity. And that's the level of collaborations you can see in the business ecosystem. As you can think about the map right here, you can think about different relationships that you can build in the ecosystem. So in terms of direct value creation or capture, think about it in the ecosystem business mapping. We talk about B2B customer. So one business create value, a manufacturer, for example, exchange the value, the other capture it, but it is actually not a one-way relationship. It's not a unilateral relationship. It's a bi-directional, as we call it. And the thing to understand here, if we create value in an ecosystem, it could be in the form of monetary, but also it could be I have team working skills, and I'm going to help you create this product, great product you develop. We're going to partner to do it. I do have great people with knowledge here. We're going to exchange people. I'm going to have someone in your team to help you develop that very quickly. I do have risk management skills, and I'm going to, take a look at the business environment and tell you how to prepare for risks that may have an impact on your project. So it's not only monetary; it could be anything. So what John and I saw in this, as we were looking at this research, there is a trend to move from the single firms to partnerships and ecosystems. So we observe that, and many researchers observe that. There is a trend to move from competitions to co-petitions. It means that we don't only compete, but sometimes when we have to work together, we do work together. We have an example for that. Instead of product delivery, we think about complex solutions delivery. We give you an example. Software as a system is one of the things that software as a service. That's one of the things that become prevalent nowadays. You can't buy, for many companies, you can't buy a desktop version of the software. There is a tendency also to move from top-driven hierarchies to flat hierarchies. Here we're talking about organizational structure. When we have a too big company, we're going to break it down into business units where everyone is going to have their strategic plans, make decisions as fast as possible. We're moving from managing stakeholders to engaging stakeholders. In most cases, they say you can't really manage those people because they are independent entities, right? So if you want to build a true organic relationship, you have to engage people instead of trying to manage them, right? And there is a tendency to move. We still have contract. We must have them because this is one way we reduce risk in the business ecosystem, but people tend to build relationships in business ecosystems. So that is, things that are fascinating to me, and see how companies and managers, leaders are navigating this new era is really important. So that's was going to be my part. I'm going to pass over to John, who's going to talk about what are the steps in analyzing value creation and capture in ecosystem. John, over to you.
Thanks, Jacques. So there are some steps that people need to take, organizations need to take to actually analyze value creation and actually capture this information in ecosystems. The first thing is you need to develop an ecosystem map, and we'll show an example of that later on in a slide or two. There was a workshop done by one of the authors for this research about the steps involved with organizations about how you can do a mind mapping exercise and figure out who you could reach out to and who can add value or you think can add value and vice versa. While you're making the design or developing this map, you also need to create criteria, actually predetermined criteria to select these members. Having this create criteria will help organize and be a little bit more efficient in the, during this time to actually create this ecosystem. Not only do you need to create the criteria, then you need to identify these members with the greatest value creation potential. Now, I know in my project management class, there's a chapter about mind mapping exercises, and I work with engineers, and engineers are could be very linear, but with a mind mapping exercise, you're using your creative side. And when we do an example of this in our course or this class, students really, appreciate that or kind of find it's a fun exercise to do. So creating a ecosystem map based on predetermined criteria to help select members and then identify the members with the greatest value can be a fun exercise, but also very important. You'll also need to then summarize the most important members identified. And then if you examine those relationships or examine the value exchange options for these key relationships. Again, we'll show you an example in a minute. You need to then identify partnership configurations. And then finally, you need to assess this and select the most promising configurations.
So here, when John talked about partnership configuration, is it going to be a simple relationship, one direction, or is it going to be a multi-directions, or are we going to create something, more permanent, linking us more in a stronger relationship? So that's what John's talking about.
Next slide, please. Again, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, I do a lot with service learning, working with nonprofit community partners, and there's different trends going from a transactional relationship to transformational. And a lot of this is more of a transformational relationship where there's a give and take on both sides. So in this slide, we're looking at evaluating partners in a business ecosystem. Now, you want to have clearly defined strategies. What is the potential, for example, what is the potential for growth and development? Do these partners actually have a commitment to the quality that aligns with your strategy? We want to make sure, are they customer focused? And when you're looking at that is what is the economic viability to continue not only the product or service to the customer, but also, I guess, with your partner as well. And is your partner reliable and dependable? I mean, if you have things that need to get done, can you trust and depend upon the other people in your ecosystem to help, complete what they intended to do by the time? And then finally, the knowledge management system, you look at safety. Are you working in a safe environment? Especially if you're like on the factory floor. Does your partner have a commitment to ESG, environmental sustainability and governance?
So one thing John talked about here, I think that's important, is the idea of having a knowledge management system in place. A knowledge management system, when you have this, it allows the firm to learn together as a community. And there is nothing more important to that. And there is a trend to evaluate business not only based on economic viability, whether they profitable or sustainable, in terms of their ability to exist in the long term, but also in the true meaning of sustainability. Here, commitment to ESG, environmental, social, and governance is something we talked about earlier. Are we dealing with a company that's going to impact its environment, or do they have any considerations for how they impact people and society in the process of creating value? So that's more, John. Would you like me to move to the next slide?
Yes, please. Here's an example of a partnership ecosystem map. In this example, we're looking at Ford. And Ford, it could be like a mind mapping exercise. You look at Ford and look at all the different organizations or relationships in their map. And you can see that, for example, even though Ford has all these relationships, there's also relationships within relationships. For example, at the top right, you have Fleet. I can't read their Fleet, and that has an arrow ground to, it looks like a ram's head down there at the bottom. So there's a relationship between Ford, and there's also interrelationships between the other partners within the same system. So you can see that we're actually developing quite a big web of information and partnerships or relationships. And
Yes.
again, we're talking about value creation. In each piece, they're capturing and creating value to one and each other. And you can see how big this can grow and how complex it can get very quickly.
And if you'd like to take a look at this yourself, please go to partnerbase.com. And if you click on any company in this ecosystem, you'll see their own ecosystem. What are the other firms that are in the ecosystem, not partnering Ford? You're going to see that. It's really a very cool site to visit if you want to play with this. All right.
And then finally, the characteristics of a successful partnership includes a strong sense of ownership. We all always like to have people with a strong sense of ownership on our team to complete a project. Strong commitment from each of the partners. We want to have a clear definition of the nature of the cooperation, as well as clear assignments of responsibilities. Having resources, knowledge, and know-how and ideas are shared within the partnership. So we don't want to hide anything. We want to share this information. That's how we grow. We want to make sure we have adequate financial and human resources for implementation and any sort of product or service that we're developing with each other. And finally, and most importantly, the learning culture is fostered. We want to make sure that we're all learning from each other to help capture that value and to give it. Next.
Okay, so it's Q&A time. We do have 3 minutes for questions. So, the floor is yours for questions.
Go ahead, Nassim. Nassim has raised a hand.
So yes, we thank you for presentations. We have comments too, but I have to leave. Okay, so thank you for Nazim for attending. So, hey, do you have questions for Nazim? Go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much. So I have another meeting to participate, so I have only a few seconds. So I would like to add some, points to this good presentation. So I would say that innovation ecosystems are a way, to pass from that value chain to a value network. Mm-hmm. And also they provide us an opportunity, to view different actors of the ecosystem. For example, the actors who innovates, the actors who produces, and the actors who offers kind of product or service to users. But we know that for example, who uses that system or that product, they aren't firstly the organization or the people who are in need of that product or service, and also they aren't exactly the actors who are going to pay for that product or service. And also when we are thinking in a systemic view, in an innovation ecosystem, so we will be able to integrate sustainability issues as well, because we are creating a kind of value as a whole for all the actors. And we are creating some kind of value for the society, we are creating some good impacts for the environment. So they are achievable by this kind of collaboration between different organizations together. And they aren't usually achievable by only one actor or one company, one business. So it is a good way, to incorporate sustainability issues to that as well. And so thank you so much. And I'm sorry I should leave this meeting, but it was very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Nazim. That's the end of it anyway. So we'd like to thank everyone for being here today and for your support throughout the year. And it was a fantastic year because of you. And we hope to see you next year, 2023. Happy holidays to you all. And we look forward to seeing you. And we see Diane here too.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Fantastic job.